Writing Ratface, a point-blank limited series on the process of writing a 50,000-word first draft. This is your host, Justin Bendell, and this is episode 10. Hey everybody. If you've listened to the last 9 episodes of this mini-series, you'll know that I've been hard at work on a first draft novel entitled Ratface. Ratface is a protagonist. Ratface came out of the pandemic, actually. March, April 2020. I was sitting at home, as many of us were, confined, worried, uncertain, anxious. I had a job, but I didn't know what the future of the world looked like, and Ratface came out of a desire to share writing on Facebook with the world in real time, write 500 words and post it on Facebook in the evening. Something to help me process some of the concern, anxiety, grief that I was facing, but also a way to reach out to others, to share something, to share work in a space, to show people that we're all out there. We can still connect. We can collaborate. We can share. We can listen. We can contribute. We can get through this. And now, a couple years later, 4 years later, I've finished a first draft of a novel. It's not great. Most first drafts are not. Mine rarely are. But what I have here in this episode are the last few thousand words of this draft. I wrote them in early November 2023. At that time, if you recall the last episode, I had gotten up to approximately 45,000 words on the draft, which meant that I needed, in order to meet my goal of 50,000, I needed to write a lot in this final week, November 6th through the 14th. So on Sunday, November 12th, I got up to 47,138 words. I wrote, I am very close to finishing my goal for the first draft. By Tuesday, 3 days later, I'd hit my target. 50,224 was my final count. I'd like to share some words from, rather than talk about everything I was trying to do in those last few thousand words. I was trying to do a lot. It was pretty helter-skelter. I was hoping to write more about Ratface and his interactions with this child that he kind of adopts and kind of serves as an engine motor to the plot. There's also a confrontation with his father figure. There's also, how the hell am I going to end this novel? I don't really know. I figured out some paths that Ratface could take and that the plot could take in terms of deepening the emotional resonance and moving the character forward, trying the character, putting the character into difficult situations, questioning the character, trying to figure out what this character needs to do to prove themselves to the world or to themselves. And the ending was hopefully going to achieve that. Of course, in a first draft, it's hard to say what that's going to be because a lot of what I've written is going to get rewritten in the second draft. The first draft is me trying to capture as many ideas as I can and to give some kind of shape to the novel, but after that, after I read it, after I ponder, after I get some beta readers on this thing and go, what is this story trying to be? That's where some eureka moments might happen, some moments of illumination where I realize what exactly Ratface is up to. This is where Ratface starts to separate from being a stand-in for me and my own feelings about the world, and Ratface takes on his or her own persona. Ratface becomes a genuine three-dimensional character that is apart from myself. It takes time, it takes distance, but that's the next step, or one of the next steps. In the meantime, I wrote a few thousand words. In the last week of my writing session in early November 2023, and I'd like to share some of those with you. Once I've shared the words, I'm going to have a little bit of a reflection on the process, kind of a what now type of conversation with you, and we'll wrap up. How did things get so bad? They've always been this bad, he says. I have a hard time believing that. We hear all the stories of things in the past. The world was a place we could live in. The air was clear. People traveled. People ate different foods. People smiled and laughed and drank wine. People had jobs. People came home at night with lights on in their houses, and televisions, and radios, the internet, and they invited their friends over for dinner. Fiction? No, not fiction. I know what fiction is. But not all books are fiction. They pretty much are. No, not true. Some books are about the past. History books. Ain't history written by the winners? Yeah, I've heard that. I know about perspective and all that. Points of view, whatever. But history books were also about what really happened. You can't say that all this stuff was made up. That we've always lived like this. What about the before wartime? No, you're right. It wasn't always this bad. It couldn't have been. But it wasn't always very good either. That's a fantasy. Who was it good for? Was it good for the poor? Was it good for everyone? Who benefited from those stories that you're talking about? First off, was it ever good for the poor ever? That's really the question you have to ask. This one will resolve all the questions you'll ever have. Maybe this happened, maybe that happened, maybe this person ate chicken, maybe that person ate a quail, maybe this person had a swimming pool, maybe that person traveled in a jet. But who were these people? Was it ever the poor who got these things? If the answer is no, every time, or almost every time, then it was always only good for those who were not poor. And guess who was poor? Most everybody, pretty much. I'm not even sure who's talking, but I'm establishing a conversation of two people in this world occupied by Ratface and the denizens of this post-apocalyptic society. They're trying to understand where they are in this dire circumstance, where they are and what came before. And in the same way that we often romanticize the past and we go, well, back in the day, things didn't used to be that way. Every generation does this. Every generation has these delusions of false grandeur about their past experience. It's nostalgia. It can be dangerous. There are always things to hold on to from the past, but if we don't study the past closely, we forget about how fucked up things were and how much things have improved for so many in certain ways. And what we can learn from the past, what we can keep and what we can toss, what we can move away from and what we can move into. Anyway, that's what they're doing here. They're reflecting. They're trying to understand their moment, which I think is important in this story because I'm trying to understand this moment. What is this moment where Ratface is? What does it mean for him, for them, for this world? Here's another bit. Again, I don't know if I'm going to keep it. These are the images I'm conjuring in the last moments of writing. So maybe this is where the story's going. Or maybe it's garbage I throw away. I don't know. Ratface sucks in the noxious yellow gas and immediately collapses. He's not dead yet, he thinks, lying in the dirt and the weeds as the smell of sickly sulfur tangles with his lungs. He wants to puke, but cannot. Everything is phased out, black and white flickering. He tries to draw breath and cannot. He tries to move his arm and cannot. He can move his left leg, and he does, just a little bit. Or he thinks he does. From one position in the sand to a new position. But barely he moves. All of a sudden he is gasping. Air has returned. It is no good, but it is better than no air at all. He gasps, and gasps again. Then he chokes. He smells marmalade. He doesn't even know what marmalade is, but his brain signals to him that he smells marmalade. Orange marmalade. Is he dreaming? Is he dead? He looks up and sees firelight in the sky. He sees men in parachutes, black silhouettes against the deep gray sky. This was how it was. He knows that he is not dead, but he's not too far off, and the scene makes him wonder if being alive is better. Then he thinks of the kid. He says, "Get up, Ratty. Get the fuck up." And he does. And he's running, limping, running to get away from those in the parachutes floating down into the lot near the river with their armaments and their noxious gases. They have come to kill. They are not the terror squad. They are worse. They are an army of terror, and they are from the outside. They make the terror squad squeal in fear. They have no allegiance, these parachutists, to anyone in the city, including the group of 9. Terror squads are the local bullies. Now the regional bullies have come to collect what is due to them. And what is due to them? Absolutely everything. Okay, so things are getting dire in Ratface country. It scares the shit out of me thinking about it. It's probably why it's there. What other things did I write about? I have a section where I talk more about that kind of post-apocalyptic war situation. I have some new names. I have some new characters. I don't know what they are. I don't know if they're important. I'm not going to read every single thing I wrote in that last day. I have a thing about the kids being sick, about medics being out of prophylactics. I think I'm trying to really amp up this finale. I'm trying to make Ratface's narrow world of survival and getting what's his, expand it to include, to incorporate a citywide conflict, a struggle over the city. Who owns the city? Who wants it more? Who's going to fight for it and how? And for what reason? Are these external terror armies going to claim colonial territorial rights over a city? Or will the people rise up and defend it? Is that even possible? Or is it just a dream? Will they die fighting? Will they die on their knees or will they die on their feet? Or maybe they'll survive. Just there's a chance. If I can conjure an earned opportunity in this story to make a fight like that satisfying, to make a struggle like that feel justified, feel appropriate in the context of the novel, then maybe that's where I'll go. Or maybe it's too formulaic, and I don't want to have some big battle. Not everything has to end in a big battle. Sometimes things can end in a whimper, and maybe I'll go that way. I don't know for sure. But I wanted to share with you, rather than some kind of climactic thing that may or may not remain after this draft gets finished, I wanted to share with you literally my last writing before hitting 50,000 words. I'm not sure if it's even related to the book, but it's something I wrote. And I started to write it, and once I finished writing it, I got over the 50,000 mark, and that was it. I stopped. So I'm going to share it with you, because I can, and because there's something important, significant about writing the final words, even if they in themselves might not be significant words. And I haven't read these in months, so I can't even tell you exactly what they are. So let's go. The kid meets the boy on the bike. They go for a while on the wet road, kicking up mud. They gain enough elevation, and the mud stops. It isn't dry, but the road is solid. The buildings here are blown out. This part of town was heavily damaged the last round of riots. The riots do nothing. People let off steam, but they're not even rioting to change things. It's just frustration. The kid thinks about how the riots could be more effective if you plan for them, and if you anticipate the location of the enemy. You can turn a riot into a battle. You can make it strategic. Everywhere the kid looked, there was a lack of strategic thinking. The enemy knew what they were doing. They held all the cards. They didn't even have to gamble. We were like a timepiece, always ticking, always on time. The moment we started deviating from the script, that's when the tenor changes. That's when we have a chance. But we have to do it in a way that matters. The boy parks the bike. The kid goes up the stairs. The room she seeks is on the 7th floor. It's a long climb. Her thighs are sore when she gets to the door. The door is unlocked. She pushes it open. There are 24 people inside. She recognizes 3 of them. One of them is a woman she met the other night. "Oh, it's you. I'm glad you're here," she says. The kid reaches out a hand. She's been told it is normal when meeting people to reach out a hand. The woman takes the hand. Her hand is warm and soft, but there are calluses too. It is a strong hand, a strong grip. "Are you here alone?" she says. "No," the kid says. "I brought someone." "Where are they?" "Below, parking the bike. They're safe." "How do you know?" At this moment, the boy steps inside the space. She turns to the boy, and silence envelops the room. The woman drops her glass. It shatters on the checkered tile. "Jenver," she says, her voice like autumn leaves. The boy hears the voice, knows the voice. "Mama?" he says. "Mama?" That's it. Alright folks, addendum, next steps. I've written 50,000 words of a first draft. What now? Obviously, revision. But how? I've spoken to revision multiple times, but here's my last little bit. It's a simple but fair question. Getting to the end, only to start again at the beginning, feels a little bit like Sisyphus pushing a boulder up a hill. It's daunting, it's overwhelming. I just spent all this time creating a draft. Do I know how to revise? Do I want to revise? Is it even worth keeping? Of course, I put the draft away for a while, give it a rest, allow myself to step away from the art so that I can come back and see it clearly. Because I don't want to spend a bunch of time revising and getting it wrong, or revising exhausted and not really knowing what I want. Of course, the question is there a wrong way? Is there a better way? Is there one way? At this point, we want to take a step back, reflect. Reading what we have is valuable, though. I can read now, I can read later, I can read multiple times. You're going to reread your drafts, reread them and reread them, and have others read them. Taking notes on the beats that seem to work, that's one thing I like to do. Read, and when you see something you like, when you see something that goes, oh, that makes sense, or that's speaking to me right now, you want to highlight that, you want to make a note. Keep the things that are relevant, that are meaningful to you, because you can build from those pieces. Those are building blocks. Thinking about characters, who stands out, who is essential to the story. Is Jenver, this brand new character, essential to the story? Or is this a throwaway character I tossed in at the end because I was tired and I just wanted to get to a goal? I don't know. Maybe it'll become the story of Jenver. You don't know at the beginning. That kind of stuff surprises you down the road. Thinking about characters, who is perhaps less essential? Can a few characters be melded into one? There's a lot of characters. Maybe I need to boil a few into a stew, reduce it down to one character that fits multiple situations. These are questions you ask. You need to ask at some point, now or soon. You also want to ask yourself questions about the plot, or I want to ask myself. What is the plot? Is there a cause and effect chain? Do things happen for a reason? Do things in the story further the plot towards some kind of climactic conclusion where pressure rises and things have to happen and the character has to evolve or die or change or die or face the facts or die? Or how does this work if we're talking about Western conventional storytelling? What is the major dramatic question in this novel? What about the setting, the point of view? Have I developed these appropriately? Have I nailed these? Or do I need to spend more time developing aspects of all or some of these writing craft elements? In the point of view, am I in the third person? I have been. Is it limited? Does the character's voice and perspective work for the purposes of the story? Once I read through the entire draft, I'll ask myself, is third working, or do I need to make this a first-person story? You know, Ratface talking about Ratface, living the Ratface way, and seeing the world through Ratface's eyes. Will that get too narrow? Well, if I love the voice of Ratface, it might be great. But what if I don't? What if Ratface's voice isn't enough for this story? Does that mean that Ratface isn't a great character? Or maybe I need to think in a third person like I have been. These are questions I'll be asking. And there we are. Those are the moves I have to make going forward. And they're moves I will tackle. My first intention was to take a month off and then return to Ratface at the turn of the year, 2024. But it turns out I didn't have the time or the energy to do that. I went right back into teaching and administrative work and got distracted by other things happening, including the war against Gaza, and just didn't have the heart to focus on writing. But now that it's May, I'm thinking about writing again. I actually just revisited some of the Ratface writing, sent it off to a writing group that I'm a part of, and said, hey, here are some words. What do you think? Rather than start to diagnose Ratface myself, I've decided to share it with a few people, get some feedback. If they come back and tell me, what the hell are you doing? This is garbage. Well, then I'm going to have a good understanding of perhaps of where I'm at from the perspective of a few people I may trust. If they come back and say, hey, this is some sharp stuff, I want to see more, that might inspire me into some more Ratface action. We'll see. Writing is it's a temperamental friend for me. Sometimes I love it, sometimes we get along great, and sometimes I can't fucking stand it, and I'm sure the writing hates me as well. We'll see how it goes going forward, but this has been a fun journey. I think that my ideas for writing Ratface were keeping myself busy as I recovered from heart surgery. And next month, I'll have reached the year point. I'm still alive. I have a novel draft to play with, and I hope that this podcast mini-series has given some insight, given some sense of what it takes, some of the craft and some of the ups and downs, trials and tribulations of one writer working on a project. You can do it if that's what you're after. It's totally possible. I've done it numerous times. This is not my first novel draft that I've written, but it's never the same. It's never the same road, and that's one of the pleasures of it. You go on a journey, single step, and you're never quite sure where you're going to go, what you're going to run into along the way, and where you're going to end up. But persistence pays off. Don't push it too hard. Take your time. But discipline matters, and sticking to it, creating a system where you return to it daily or at least weekly, and develop a pattern, develop a habit. You don't have to grind out a novel every month like some of the early black mass crime fiction writers. At the same time, if you don't develop a pattern of writing on a regular basis, whatever that is to you, then the novel will slip away. I hope that this was useful to you. I look forward to hearing about your own novel experiments. If you have them, feel free to reach out to me. And at the end of writing Ratface, we're going to return back to point blank, and we're going to read some books and share some of our book analyses with you, Kurt and I. But we are coming to a conclusion for this podcast series. We have both, gone in different directions in terms of our lives, and while we're still close and still readers and still friends, we're not as committed to spending as much time with crime fiction as we have been the past few years. So we're going to work our way toward a finale, maybe another couple episodes or so, and wrap it up. Anyway, that's that for Ratface. If you want to know more about how Ratface evolves or develops, check us out on our website. Reach out to me. You can also find us on Facebook, Point Blank, Hardboiled Noir and Detective Fiction on Facebook. All right, take care, and happy writing, everybody.